She boarded the private jet with nothing but a backpack, a tired smile, and her young daughter by her side. Dressed in worn jeans and sneakers, she looked like someone who didn't belong anywhere near luxury. The flight attendant took one look at her and made a snap judgment. A poor single mom who had clearly wandered onto the wrong plane. But when the child accidentally spilled juice, the situation escalated in seconds. With shocking cruelty, the attendant lashed out, yelling at the little girl and slapping the mother in front of everyone. What she didn't realize, what no one on that flight knew, was that the woman she had just humiliated wasn't just a passenger. She was Emily Carter, billionaire CEO of the aerospace company that owned the very jet they were standing on. And in just a few hours, lives would change, careers would end, and the meaning of power, grace, and revenge would take on an entirely new form. The soft hum of engines and the scent of polished leather filled the cabin as the flight crew made final preparations. The private jet gleamed inside, white marble countertops, plush cream seats, and golden accents that screamed wealth. It was a plane meant for royalty, not for the woman who walked aboard next. Emily Carter stepped onto the jet holding the tiny hand of her 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Dressed in worn jeans, a plain gray hoodie, and sneakers that had seen better days, she didn't look like someone who belonged in first class, let alone on a $70 million private aircraft. Her dark hair was tied back in a low ponytail, her face makeup-free and her posture quietly confident. Lily skipped beside her, wearing a pink backpack with a missing zipper and clinging to a stuffed giraffe. The flight attendant, Sabrina, didn't even try to hide her disgust. She stood tall in her pristine navy blue uniform, her blonde bun tight to squeak, her lips pursed like she was sucking on a lemon. She took one look at Emily and frowned. "Excuse me, ma'am," Sabrina said, stepping in front of Emily and physically blocking the aisle with her arm. "This jet is not open for public tours." Emily blinked, caught slightly off guard. "I'm not here for a tour," she said politely. "We're passengers." Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "This flight is strictly for a Mr. Carter and approved guests. You must be mistaken. Perhaps you're meant to be on a commercial flight. The terminals are that way." She gestured toward the exit with a forced smile. Emily gave her a calm, unreadable look and pulled out her phone. "Here's our boarding confirmation," she said, holding it out. "Emily Carter and one guest." Sabrina snatched the phone, looked at the screen, then scoffed. "Emily Carter," she repeated, mocking. "Nice try. This is Mr. Carter's plane, the owner, not someone dressed like." She trailed off, glancing pointedly at Emily's hoodie. Emily didn't rise to the bait. She simply smiled, small, confident, patient. "That's correct," she said. Before Sabrina could say anything else, Lily tugged on her mom's sleeve. "Mommy, can I have my juice now?" Emily nodded and unzipped the side of her backpack, pulling out a small juice box. "Of course, honey. Just be careful, don't spill." But the plane shifted slightly beneath them as the engines prepared to taxi, and Lily, balancing the box awkwardly, squeezed it too hard. A squirt of juice shot out and splashed onto the carpet near Sabrina's polished shoe. Sabrina gasped like she'd just been assaulted. "Are you kidding me?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea how much that carpet costs?" Lily's eyes widened. "I'm sorry," she said in a tiny voice. "Don't yell at her," Emily said, stepping protectively in front of her daughter. "It was an accident." But Sabrina's face twisted in fury. "You people think you can just walk in here and trash $1 million jet? Who even let you on this flight?" Emily raised a hand gently to defuse the situation. "I told you, and that's when it happened." Sabrina slapped hard. A sharp crack rang out as her palm struck Emily's cheek. Gasps echoed from the cockpit. Emily staggered back a step, her hand going to her face. Lily burst into tears, burying her face in her mom's hoodie. "I want you off this plane," Sabrina hissed. "Now, before I call security." Emily didn't say a word. She looked Sabrina in the eye, calm, controlled, almost too calm. Then she gently lifted Lily into her arms, walked toward the nearest seat, and sat down as if nothing had happened. Sabrina's jaw dropped. "What do you think you're doing?" I said out. From the front of the plane, a voice called out, firm and confused. "What's going on back there?" "The pilot." Sabrina straightened quickly. "Just a mix-up, sir. I'm handling it." But Emily slowly turned her head, still rubbing her cheek, and said just loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'd like to speak to the captain. I believe he works for me." The silence inside the cabin was razor sharp, Only the distant hum of the engines dared to speak. Emily sat with her daughter quietly sobbing in her lap, her cheek reddening from the slap. Her face remained composed, but her eyes told a different story, calculated, sharp and entirely in control. Just then, the cockpit door opened, and Captain James stepped into the aisle. Tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a crisp pilot's uniform, he looked every bit the professional, but his face was creased with concern. "I heard shouting," he said, his voice steady but clearly alert. "Everything all right back here?" Before Emily could speak, Sabrina practically leapt forward, her demeanor flipping from venomous to velvet in an instant. "Just a little misunderstanding, Captain," she cooed, smoothing her skirt. "A passenger got on the wrong flight. I've got it under control." James looked over at Emily and Lily. Something about the scene didn't sit right. A small child in tears, a woman clutching her face, and Sabrina's uncharacteristic chipper tone was the biggest red flag of all. Then Emily slowly stood up. "Captain," she said, brushing her hair back from her face, revealing the red imprint on her cheek. "I'm the one paying for your fuel today. I'd appreciate a moment of your time." James blinked. "Excuse me." Emily reached into her bag and pulled out her eye. She handed it to him, without a word. He studied it, then looked back at her, eyebrows raised. With growing uncertainty, he pulled out his flight manifest tablet and tapped through the screen. His eyes widened. He looked up at her again, his voice quieter now, touched with disbelief. "You're Emily Carter," as in Emily Carter, CEO of Carter Aerospace. Sabrina's breath caught in her throat. "Wait, what?" James turned the tablet toward her. There, in clear digital ink, was the name Emily Grace Carter, listed as primary passenger and owner. Owner, not guest, not relative. The owner of the jet. Sabrina's hands trembled. That has to be a mistake," she stammered, her voice faltering. She didn't say who she was." She walked on dressed like what?" Emily asked softly, her tone measured. "Like a woman taking care of her child, or like someone you thought was beneath you." The words hit harder than a slap. Sabrina's face went pale. James took a step back, looking from Emily to Sabrina, connecting the dots. "You put your hands on her?" he asked, stunned. She was there was juice," and Sabrina's voice cracked. She was being difficult. Lily sniffled, peeking out from behind her mom's hoodie. "She yelled at me," the little girl whispered. Emily knelt beside Lily, wiping her daughter's tears, then looked back up at the captain. "I didn't come here to be treated like royalty. I came to see how my passengers are treated when no one knows who they are." James exhaled, his posture shifting. "Understood." Sabrina stood frozen, panic rising. "Carter, please, I didn't know. I thought." "That's exactly the problem," Emily interrupted, standing now. Her voice wasn't angry, but it was powerful. "You thought, and based on nothing more than my clothes and my daughter's backpack, you made a judgment that says more about you than me." The blood drained completely from Sabrina's face. She reached for the tablet, as if to confirm the truth with her own eyes, but she already knew. Emily Carter wasn't just a passenger, she was the boss, the billionaire, the woman who could end her career with a single call, and worse, she wasn't even angry, she was calm, and that, Sabrina realized, was far more terrifying. The atmosphere inside the jet was suffocating, not because of the altitude, but because of the heavy silence that hung in the cabin, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Sabrina stood motionless, eyes darting between Captain James and Emily, still trying to process what she had just learned. Emily Carter, dressed in a hoodie, with a juice-stained child on her lap, wasn't a confused passenger. She was the owner, the billionaire, the woman Sabrina had just slapped. But instead of yelling, instead of demanding she be dragged off the jet or fired on the spot, Emily slowly sat back down in her seat and crossed her legs. She adjusted Lily's blanket, ran a gentle hand through her daughter's hair, and finally looked up with the kind of calm that made everyone around her more nervous than if she'd screamed. "I hired a new head of in-flight operations last week," Emily began, her voice smooth and measured. "They asked how I wanted to begin reviewing performance. I told them I'd like to fly anonymously, just like my guests do. No heads up, no VIP treatment, just me, my daughter and a regular experience." Sabrina swallowed hard. "I didn't know." Emily tilted her head. "No, you did. But what bothers me isn't that you didn't know who I was, it's that you didn't care who I might be." Sabrina's voice cracked. "I thought you were broke." Emily's voice was soft, but her eyes were sharp. "Trash. Someone who didn't deserve respect because her clothes weren't tailored, and her child had a juice box." Sabrina's lips parted, but no words came out. She'd run out of excuses. Nothing she could say would undo the slap, the shouting, the humiliation. I was tired, she finally muttered. It's been a long week. That's not how I usually treat people. Emily gave a small nod. That's the thing about power, Sabrina. You don't reveal your true character when the cameras are on and everyone's watching. You show it in moments like this, when you think no one's paying attention. The tension inside the cabin was unbearable now. Even the co-pilot was quietly peeking from the cockpit, pretending to be busy with controls. The other crew members busied themselves in silence, afraid to breathe too loudly. Sabrina's hands shook, her throat was dry. Please, Carter, I need this job. This was a mistake. Emily didn't answer. She simply turned back toward Lily, who was now curled up with her stuffed giraffe, eyes wide but calm. She leaned in and kissed her daughter's forehead. Lily whispered, "Are we in trouble?" Emily smiled gently. "Not us, sweetheart." She wrapped an arm around Lily and looked back at Sabrina. "I'll decide your future when we land." Sabrina's face crumpled. She opened her mouth again, but Emily raised a hand stopping her. "No more apologies. I've heard enough for one flight." Captain James stood quietly behind them, unsure whether to step in. Emily gave him a subtle nod, just enough to let him know she was fine, but not finished. Sabrina retreated to the galley, trembling, her perfectly polished image now a fragile shell of pan. For the rest of the flight, no one said much. The silence wasn't awkward, it was reverent, like everyone understood something bigger had just happened. That power didn't always roar, sometimes it whispered. Sometimes it smiled through pain, and sometimes it sat quietly, holding a child, while deciding the fate of someone who never saw the truth until it was too late. Time passed slowly in the quiet hum of altitude. The jet had leveled out somewhere over the Midwest, cruising smoothly above the clouds, but tension still lingered in the air like a storm waiting to return. The crew avoided eye contact, uncertain of their play. Passengers who had once felt like professionals, now watched Emily Carter, the billionaire in sneakers, with a mix of curiosity, regret and awe, and Sabrina was unraveling, desperately trying to erase the damage. She hovered around Emily like a nervous bird. "Would you like something to drink? Sparkling water? Wine?" she asked, voice soft, eyes wide with apology. No answer. Emily didn't even glance her way. Sabrina returned minutes later with a tray of hand-selected snacks, artisan chocolates, and a warm towel. "For your daughter, ma'am." I found a small toy in the drawer. She knelt beside Lily, who stared at her shyly. "It's a little plain. Want it?" Lily looked up at her mom first. Emily gently shook her head. Lily turned back to her coloring book. Sabrina's face flushed. She stood up, clenched the towel in her hand, and walked stiffly toward the galley. Near the cockpit, Captain James watched it all unfold, his hand resting on the doorframe. After a moment, he approached Emily cautiously. "Carter," he said in a low voice, "if I may ask, what are you planning to do about all this?" Emily didn't respond right away. She was watching Lily draw a purple sun on the corner of her notepad. Her daughter, calm again, was her whole world, and her reason for everything. Emily finally looked up. "I'm going to teach her," she said softly, "that power isn't about yelling louder, it's about knowing when to speak, and when to let silence do the work." James nodded thoughtfully. "And Sabrina?" Emily gave a small sigh. "I'll teach her something too. About grace, and consequences." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. As if on cue, the plane shuddered suddenly. A brief dip, then another. The cabin lights flickered, and the engines groaned against high-altitude winds. Turbulence, passengers tense. Lily gripped her mom's hand, her drawing forgotten. Captain James returned to the cockpit. Sabrina stumbled into the aisle, panic flashing across her face. "Everyone stay seated. Please remain calm," she called out, but her voice was shaky and unconvincing. The plane gave a strong jolt, and a few overhead compartments rattled open. A drink tray slid dangerously across the counter. A passenger gasped. Sabrina clutched the seat nearest her and gave a confused, half-formed order. Secure the seat belts." The crew looked to her, uncertain. No one moved. Then a new voice cut through the confusion. Calm, clear, commanding. "Everyone please fasten your seatbelts immediately. Secure any loose items. This turbulence is expected to pass within the next 10 minutes. All eyes turned to the Emily stood tall at the front of the aisle, her hand on the intercom, her voice steady like she'd done this 100 times. Because she had. Years of building Carter Aerospace from the ground up, meant hundreds of flights, dozens of emergencies, and more than enough experience to lead. Her presence was magnetic. Even the cabin crew instinctively listened. She walked over, secured Lily's belt, and gave her a reassuring smile. "Just bumpy air, honey, like driving over potholes in the sky." Lily giggled nervously. "Okay, Mom." When the turbulence finally passed, and the jet settled back into a smooth cruise. The cabin erupted in soft applause, but not for the weather, for Emily, the billionaire, the mother, the leader. Sabrina stood to the side, watching with quiet awe. She'd just witnessed something powerful. Not status, not revenge, but true control and grace. The sky outside the jet had calmed to a soft endless blue. White clouds floated below like whispers, and the plane glided smoothly through the last leg of its journey. Inside, the cabin was hushed, not with tension now, but with anticipation. Everyone knew a decision was coming. Emily Carter sat upright in her seat, her daughter sleeping soundly in the crook of her arm, clutching her stuffed giraffe. The chaos, the storm, the slap, all of it seemed far away. But for Sabrina, standing a few feet away, the silence was crushing. Emily gently stroked Lily's hair, then glanced toward the galley. "Sabrina," she called softly. The flight attendant stiffened. Her heels felt heavier than iron. As she slowly made her way down the aisle, head bowed, hands clasped in front of her, she stopped just in front of Emily's seat, heart pounding. "Yes, Miss Carter." Emily looked up at her calm, composed, unreadable. "You judged me the moment I walked onto this plane." Sabrina opened her mouth to speak, but Emily raised a hand. "You saw a woman in sneakers and a hoodie, and decided I didn't belong. You treated me like dirt under your shoe. Then when I stood up to protect my daughter from your shouting, you hit me." Tears welled up in Sabrina's eyes. "I know, I was wrong." Emily leaned forward slightly. Her voice was gentle but carried weight. "You didn't just slap a passenger, Sabrina. You assaulted the owner of this aircraft. And more than that, you humiliated a mother in front of her child." Sabrina swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "I need this job, please." "You're fired." The words hit like a knife. Sabrina blinked, froze. Her face crumpled, as the tears finally fell. "Please, I don't have anything else. I was just promoted. My rent, my mother's medication." Emily paused. She studied Sabrina for a moment, not with cold judgment, but with something closer to understand. Then she reached into her bag, and pulled out a small clean business card. She held it out. Sabrina looked at it hesitantly, before taking it in shaky fingers. "Hope Haven Women's Shelter. Contact Director of Programs. Direct line, where second chances take flight." Sabrina frowned. "What is this?" Emily's voice was calm. "It's a shelter I've supported for years. They help women get back on their feet. But more than that, they train and hire people with potential, people with fire." Sabrina looked confused. "You want me to work at a shelter?" "I want you to start somewhere where compassion matters more than polish," Emily said. "Where you'll be judged not by your heels, but by your heart." Sabrina stared at the card like it was the last lifeline in a storm. She clutched it to her chest, overwhelmed. "Thank you. I don't deserve this." "No," Emily replied, standing and adjusting her daughter's blanket. "You don't, but sometimes, the only way people learn, is when someone shows them the path they refuse to see." The cabin lights dimmed slightly, as the jet began its descent. The captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing in approximately 10 minutes. Please make sure your seatbelts are securely fastened." Emily took her seat again, and looked out the window. City lights began to twinkle far below, a reminder that the world was still spinning, full of noise, judgment and expectations. But here, in this sky, at this altitude, she had created something else. Accountability, mercy, change. She glanced at Lily, who stirred and blinked up at her with a sleepy smile. "Are we there yet, Mommy?" Emily smiled and squeezed her hand. "Almost, sweetheart. And don't worry, we landed just fine." She looked out once more and whispered, almost to herself, "I may be a billionaire, but being a mom, that's my real power." In just one flight, what seemed like a simple journey turned into something far greater, a powerful story about perception, judgment, and the quiet strength we often overlook. A woman walked onto a jet, as a single mom in jeans and a hoodie, dismissed and humiliated by someone who believed they were better. But that woman, Emily Carter, wasn't just any mother. She was a billionaire, the CEO of one of the largest aerospace companies in the world, and more importantly, a woman with integrity, self-control and a deeper understanding of justice than most could ever imagine. Emily had every reason to explode in fury. She had the power to ruin Sabrina's life with a single phone call, to blacklist her from the entire airline industry, to turn that one slap into a lawsuit that could have made headlines. She had every tool to destroy, but instead of revenge, she chose restraint. Instead of humiliation, she offered a lesson, and instead of hate, she offered something far more powerful,
A second chance. That's what made Emily truly extraordinary. Not the billions in her bank account, not the jet with her name on the registration, but the ability to see beyond her own ego. She saw a frightened, broken woman hiding behind a polished uniform. She saw someone who had let power and appearances cloud her humanity, and chose not to answer cruelty with more cruelty, because Emily understood something many never do. Grace is not weakness, it's strength under control. It's the ability to stand in a position of absolute authority, and choose empathy over ego, forgiveness over fury. That day, Emily didn't just teach Sabrina a lesson, she taught everyone watching a lesson: the crew, the captain, the other passengers, even her daughter, especially her daughter. Little Lily may not remember every detail of that flight, but she'll remember the way her mom stayed calm, the way she spoke up, not by yelling, but by leading. She'll remember that her mother didn't have to wear expensive clothes or demand respect with loud words. She'll know that strength can be quiet, and that true power shows itself when no one expects it. And Sabrina, maybe she will find new purpose. Maybe she'll walk through the doors of that women's shelter ashamed, uncertain, scared, but perhaps over time, she'll become the kind of woman who treats others with compassion first. Maybe she'll tell her own story one day, the one about the billionaire she slapped, and how that woman, instead of ending her, gave her a reason to begin again. This wasn't a story about a rich woman getting even. This was a story about a mother standing up for her child, about a leader revealing her values through action, and about how one moment of humility can echo louder than a lifetime of pride. Because in the end, Emily Carter proved something vital. Power isn't in the titles you hold, it's in the choices you make when no one knows your name. And though she may command fleets, control fortunes, and change industries with a single decision, Emily reminded us all that her greatest role, the one she carried with the most honor, wasn't CEO, it was simply mom. Did that ending surprise you? What would you have done if you were in Emily's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more unbelievable stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. See you in the next one.